This is Ticket to the Stars presents I'm your host, Gloria, and I cannot be any more ecstatic because our star guest today even has the last name, guys, listen to this, Albright. Okay, talk to me. Her last name is Albright and she's on Ticket to the Stars presents. Her first name's Tiffany Albright. She's an amazing filmmaker. We're going to talk about her in just a second via bio, but I want to just highlight to the fans that Tiffany Albright drove here today all the way from Greensboro, North Carolina. She drove to Little Raleigh Radio in Raleigh, North Carolina, which is an hour away, to be here with you all. That's the kind of guest we have here today, and that's the kind of guest we like to bring. Guests who want to bring themselves closer to their fans, who'll go the extra mile. Tiffany, let's read this bio. Tiffany has worked as a director, producer, and first AD, that's assistant director, on multiple short films. As a producer in feature documentary, and as a producer and cinematographer on short documentaries. With over a decade of film experience, she has also worked for the Film Society of Lincoln Center, Full Frame Documentary Film Festival, and Scott Rudin Productions. Her primary artistic interests are in telling women-centered stories and expanding arts access for all audiences. She's also a theater artist at Triad Stage in Greensboro, North Carolina. Guys, let's hear it for Tiffany Albright! Hey, I'm making it like we're in a stadium, Tiffany.
I love it.
I'm just so delighted you're here. How are you feeling? You feeling okay?
Thank you. I am great, and I am so happy to be here. You know, when Ticket to the Stars presents calls, you come.
Oh, I like the way that sounds. I like that. Tiffany, you're a filmmaker.
Yes.
You've been a documentarian for over a decade. Mm-hmm. But now your current project is narrative film.
Yes.
Before we talk about that transition, you know, I'm really interested in the craft of film. I'm intrigued by it. I recognize there's a difference between documentary and narrative film.
Absolutely.
Certainly in the process of making it. Can you tell us what's the difference, just from a practical point of view, a textbook point of view, between documentary and narrative?
Sure. So very broad strokes, documentary film would be nonfiction storytelling, stories about real people, real events, real issues. And narrative story is using fictional characters, settings, elements to convey a story that may or may not have connection to people or events or issues in the real world.
That's beautiful. And sometimes you can merge the two, do you think?
Absolutely. There's a whole field of hybrid narrative and documentary films out there. And I think it's a really interesting space that people are playing a lot in right now. Not that I have myself delved into.
Not that you've delved into it.
But that I might someday, because
Maybe.
I think it's really exciting.
That's right. But what they do have in common, documentaries and narrative, is that they both involve stories.
Yes.
You are a storyteller.
At the end of the day, yeah.
At the end of the day. So tell us about your journey into documentary film, and then how you've now transitioned into narrative.
Sure. So when I was a wee child, I wanted to be a writer when I grew up. And I was told that was not a practical career choice to make as a 9-year-old.
Parents.
Exactly. And teachers.
And teachers.
So I decided that I would be a journalist. And I was involved in my middle school news channel and my high school newspaper. And that definitely seemed like a really good fit for me. I could go out and write, but write about real things. And that would be okay. And when I went to college, I went to this little liberal arts college that I did not bother checking to see if they had a newspaper program before I enrolled. So they did not, it turned out. And I was like, oh, well, gosh, how do I keep working on this? You know, gotta get on that career ladder and start to climb. And my dreams of being a journalist had to tweak a little bit. I took a couple of documentary film courses because that seemed to my teenage brain like an analogy. But
good for
after,
you're very focused.
Well, it didn't turn out very well at all, because after taking a couple of documentary film courses, I pretty quickly abandoned my dreams to become a journalist, which was the practical choice, and decided that I wanted to be a filmmaker.
Right then.
Then I was right back to where I was when I wanted to be a writer. I was like, I don't know how I'm going to pay the bills doing this, but it's what I'm interested in.
Oh, such is life. And so how did your parents feel about that? That hey, well, I won't be a journalist, but guess what? filmmaker.
Well, the funny thing is, I don't think they were too keen on me being a journalist either.
No.
But they have been very, your life, go live it.
That's good. That's good. So yeah, college gave you the opportunity to kind of come to the revelation that you wanted to do film.
Definitely.
Now, in the documentary world, I guess because it's not narrative, you weren't writing per se, right?
I was not. So there is an element of how you craft a story, but a lot of that happens in post-production and documentary. You just have to collect what is happening. You have to shoot a lot, and you have to talk to a lot of people and convince them to talk to you. And then you find the story and you really put it together in the editing room.
I want to highlight that. I think that seems so liberating, right? That you can go in and record, and you don't have to worry about whether it's following a story or telling a story. You're just getting footage. Isn't that freeing, or is it kind of scary?
Well, I think it depends on sort of your personality.
Yeah.
So I think to me, it does feel very freeing. But I worked with a partner on a couple of films who had the opposite feeling. If you think about it in terms of you're going to invest all of this time and energy and you get to the editing room and there's no story there, you're in big trouble.
Is that a possibility?
It's always a possibility.
Really? That you can get to the editing room and you've got all this footage and there's no story?
I mean, it might depend on how creative of a storyteller you are, but it definitely might not be the story that you envision, because even though you're not crafting the story, it's almost impossible. This is right where the difference between journalism and documentary.
Okay.
Documentarians don't have to be objective. You don't go into a situation. I mean, there's observational documentary where you're not actively trying to shape the events, but a lot of documentary filmmakers are pretty upfront about the fact that there is some crafting of the story that they're doing, and they'll play with timelines, and they'll make one person more important than another in a story in order to create the drama that you need to make an effective story.
Yeah.
And I think that takes some finesse.
That does. That's true. That is very true. So the eye of the director, but then also the editor. Because I understand in the Oscars, when there's editors can get their own Oscars.
They
Am
can.
I right? And I even heard a person say that the editor often feels like, they should be getting the credit for, I don't know, the story itself, because they're the ones who who are determining how this story will be conveyed, right?
I mean,
How do you
no,
feel about
I
that?
think that there is an argument to that.
Yeah.
As someone who sometimes edits my own projects, it can make all the difference in the world.
Can make all the difference in the world.
If you are the director, you need to be heavily involved in the editing process, because that is where the story shapes.
Right. So right now you're in post-production of your narrative. Your second one, is that right? I don't think I even asked you that. Is this your first or your second narrative?
This is my second narrative that I've directed.
That you've directed. Tell us more. You did more than direct this project, because she's being so humble. I directed it.
I did this. So this was a real passion project of mine.
Okay.
This was a project that I wrote, produced, directed, and edited.
Let's hear that again, please. I wrote. She said she wrote it.
I did. I wrote it, produced it, directed, and edited.
And are you allowed to reveal the name of it?
Yes. Okay. So the film is called Mara.
Mara. M-A-R-A.
Mm-hmm. And it is a short, really atmospheric horror about this family that is being terrorized by potentially the presence of some malevolent force.
Ooh, malevolent force.
Yes.
That means not good force.
It's not very good.
Well, I'm okay with being transparent with the fans and the listeners and letting them know, as they may already know at this point, that this is a recording right now. I don't know when exactly you may be hearing it, but just hearing Tiffany Albright say that there's a malevolent force involved, I'm thinking this show needs to be aired the day before Halloween. Dun, dun, dun. It's spooky. So how would people even have an opportunity to see it?
Well, so we're in post-production right now.
Okay.
My hope is that in the next couple of months, that'll get finished up and we'll be submitting to festivals, many in North Carolina, because we've got a lot of really great genre horror film festivals in the state and in the region.
That's interesting. I did not know that. North Carolina's into horror films.
No, a lot of people are into horror films.
A lot of people are.
You're listening to Ticket to the Stars Presents, where you don't have to reach for the stars, we bring the stars to you. This season on Ticket to the Stars Presents, be inspired and be entertained by tuning into interviews with the stars of the entertainment world here in the Triangle and beyond. Find out what's going on and what's up next. Get up close and personal with the stars and find out what they stand for. Ticket to the Stars presents. That's TTTSP, Tuesdays at 3 on littleraleigh.radio.org. A Stargaze Broadcast. Now back to TTTSP with this week's exciting star guest.
This is exciting. So what made you, when your first narrative, was it a horror?
It was not a horror, but it was sort of a psychological drama.
Yeah, so are we getting at something here about the core of who Tiffany Albright is? She's into psychological thrillers and dramas and horror films. Is this something?
I am definitely into a psychological thriller, especially one that stars a complex female character at the center of the story.
Listen to that.
And often involves traumatic things happening to her children, unfortunately. Go ahead and read into that.
Yeah, right? Traumatic things?
Usually.
And did that happen in the first one? And
It did.
any of that in the second one?
Yes.
Yes! Okay, you with traumatic...
Sorry, kids.
Yeah, what did you say?
Yeah, sorry, kids. I have one,
Sorry, kids.
so go
yeah,
ahead
she
and
loves
let that
them.
be
At her
a-
heart, she does. But you touched on something there. So they tend to be focused on women. Your main character.
Yes.
And you're a director, filmmaker who happens to be female.
Yes.
If I'm not mistaken, in previous conversations we've had, darling, you've talked about, I think, a shift that happened where you wanted to now in your career maybe focus more on working with females. Am I correct?
Yes. So I began, like most young filmmakers, working with whoever I could. I got very lucky that many of my early collaborators were really talented female directors and cinematographers. And as I've progressed in my career, it has become more and more important to me to seek out women to work with. Mara was filmed with an all-female cast and crew, which is the first experience that I've had in that situation on the dozens of sets that I've been present on.
Was that intentional or it just happened that way?
It was intentional.
Okay.
If it had not been intentional, it would not have happened.
Oh,
I have had the
fascinating.
reverse experience accidentally, I'm using air quotes here, that I've been the only woman on a set of all men more than one time. And those, I think, were sort of unintentional biases that men have to work with, either people that they know or people who are their friends or people who are referred to them. And those three categories often are men.
Mm-hmm. So film is often and still may be dominated by men.
Very much so.
Do you feel you need to... for example, I thought, I might highlight the fact that she's a female filmmaker. Then I thought, that might be offensive. Maybe I don't want to be called a female filmmaker. I'm a filmmaker who happens to be female.
I'm definitely not offended by that. I actually think that it is, I think of it in a slightly different way. I think that it is more important that I am a feminist filmmaker than it is that I am a female filmmaker, because I make a specific effort behind the camera and in front of the camera to make sure that women are being at least equally represented. And if I can make it happen that way because of historical imbalances, I will have them overrepresented, because I know that there are not as many people out there looking out for that.
Right. So are there, in light of, the Me Too movement and all that's going on in the film industry, let's just talk about, are there any particular filmmakers, female filmmakers in Hollywood who you really admire, who are mentors they don't know they're your mentor, but that you really...
Definitely. There are definitely many, many women who are inspirations to me. There are countless women whose names you will probably never know, so I won't say them, but they know who they are, who have fostered me as a filmmaker. But definitely women that are in the industry actively working that I look up to. Andrea Arnold and Ava DuVernay are just two phenomenal female voices who are really claiming ownership in their space and telling really compelling original stories that constantly feed my creative energies and make me want to be on their level someday.
Wow. I believe you will, Tiffany Albright. I like what one person said. It's important to give our dreams a shot, but you're walking in it right now. So when you said they really, how did you put it? You said they're really showing ownership, or...
Yeah, they're sort of claiming their space.
How are they doing that?
I think that Andrea Arnold tells really atypical stories. They're stories that we don't get to hear a lot of. They're about young women who are not in positions of power. They sort of live off the outside of the mainstream. And she has really made a name for herself for being able to tell these very real stories in a very visceral sort of way. And then Ava is just a titan of like being able to create representation and to claim space publicly for people of color and for women in Hollywood in a way that is, again, not what you're used to seeing.
Yeah. So I wonder, in light of that, if it's things that we're not used to seeing, how are we able to see it now? There's a shift happening.
I think that there is a bit of a shift. I think that people are getting more used to it.
Yeah.
And I think that box office numbers are still what speak to studios. But when somebody like Ava DuVernay gets a shot to do a big film and can bring in an audience, then studios also learn that there is an audience
There's
out
an
there
audience
for it.
out there for it. We have to push our way through. We have to pave our way through.
Absolutely.
And then eventually studios notice, they take note, and then they begin to recognize that females can positively impact the bottom line as well, the money.
But I think that you're right, that it also comes from what's going on socially and culturally that is outside of Hollywood. I think that a lot of these things start on the ground, sort of grassroots, before anybody at a big studio takes notice of them.
Right. So, yeah, talking about grassroots, I believe you attended a film festival earlier this year here in North Carolina, or last year. What is our main Southern Documentary? The Southern Documentary Fund. They have a film festival, don't they?
They, I am not sure they have a film festival. They have an annual event called their Artist Convening.
Thank you. That's what I'm talking about. The Artist Convening.
It's a really great space where they build community with Southern filmmakers. So they did an event with an organization. They do something called peer pitch, and documentary filmmakers get to stand up and pitch their films to the audience of filmmakers and get feedback on them so they can then take them out to funders.
Right.
And then following that evening event, they did a full day of panels and masterclasses and networking with filmmakers from all over the South to just try to get them together and to try to get them access to information that they might not otherwise have.
Right. And I believe my boss, Danielle Long, one time attended one of them. And one of the things she talked about was how they seem to always bring it back to the founder of SDF. I guess it's the founder. She would always bring it back to the panelists. She would always make sure they would bring it back to, okay, but how can we Southerners, we scrappy filmmakers, make our visions? Yeah, so that's what came to mind when you said grassroots, because here at least, people are having to pull themselves up by the bootstraps and make films happen with minimal resources. And creativity is required there when you have to make a film with limited resources.
Absolutely.
So if you're making this film, Mara, and you're the director, the producer, the screenwriter, the editor, I suppose we can call that grassroots, or we could call that scrappy.
Yes, I absolutely think it was a scrappy production, because I think that there are sort of two ways to approach it. One is you are a filmmaker who has been fortunate enough to land a paying gig as a filmmaker, and you get to earn your bread and butter from that. But the rest of us are out here doing it because we love it, in the same way that a dancer has to dance and a writer has to write.
Right.
A filmmaker has to make films because without it, they will wither and die.
Yeah, and is that typically the kind of filmmakers you work with? That's how they feel?
Yes.
That they're going to wither
definitely
and die?
The people that I work with, yes. That's how I feel.
Is that how you feel?
Yeah.
Yeah, you'll wither and die if you're not able to make these films.
Yes.
That's
any
amazing.
films.
Well, then it seems to me that kind of passion has to feed through and bleed through in the project itself.
I hope so.
You hope so, right?
You're listening to Ticket to the Stars Presents, where you don't have to reach for the stars, we bring the stars to you. Be inspired.
Two things, determination and discipline.
We think about money. We think about, like, what if my body gives out? What if it doesn't? I think we have to give our dreams an honest shot.
And be entertained, tuning into interviews with the stars of the entertainment world here in the Triangle and beyond.
I'm literally in the middle of Times Square right now.
My dad took us to the local carnival. We were so excited because we didn't get to do normal things, you know? On the way out, we're like, Pops, can we get a souvenir? He said, a souvenir, really? I'll tell y'all. He said, then where's your ticket? Frame that.
Find out what's going on and what's up next.
We've got 2 upcoming events that we're excited about. The first will be happening in October in partnership with the Wicked Witch.
Get up close and personal with the stars.
This was a real passion project of mine. This was a project that I wrote, produced, directed, and edited.
Let's hear that again, please.
I was diagnosed back in 2012. The only cure is a bone marrow transplant.
And find out what they stand for.
But I want to be very careful because a lot of theaters say, oh, we're relegating our risky work, new work to a second stage. And I'm very, very adamant that that's not what's happening here.
And we want to make sure that it's understood that we respect a person's right to be who they are.
The rest of us are out here doing it because we love it. In the same way that a dancer has to dance and a writer has to write. A filmmaker has to make films because without it, they will wither and die.
This season on Ticket to the Stars presents Tuesdays at 3 on littleraleigh.radio.org, a Stargaze Broadcast. Now back to TTTSP with this week's exciting star guest.
So where will the film go from here? From post-production, where will Mara go? You said to film festivals.
Yes, definitely to film festivals. And then I think that there are a lot of interesting possibilities in the digital distribution world that I am not as familiar with.
Yeah.
Because I'm only just beginning my journey in narrative and to sort of explore what those are.
Yeah. Yeah. And when you say digital world, you mean like whether it's distributed to Netflix or Amazon or Hulu? Is that what you're referring to? Or
I think that those are the big ones that come to mind.
Sure.
I think that they are sort of less in that short film space.
Sure, that's true.
But I think that there are a lot of other platforms out there that are intentionally getting into this short form space.
Yeah.
And even, big names that you would recognize for Hollywood are on their, their off month or whatever, making a short film and then distributing through these platforms too.
Sure.
I think that there are a lot of models trying to figure out a way to make filmmakers, to get filmmakers to fill in those gaps in their financial picture to make this a more sustainable practice.
Talking about sustainable practice. We're talking about, basically you're talking about being able to live and follow your dream. Is that what we're talking when we say sustainable? Be able to continue to... So, and I know one of the things that you're doing to be able to put food on the table, Tiffany Albright, while you make your film, while you pursue your passion projects, is you're a theater artist.
Yes.
In Greensboro at Triad Stage.
Yep.
Tell us about what you do there and how that turned out.
Yeah, it's we're a professional theater company. And it's funny, I grew up in Rockingham County, which is just north of Greensboro. And while I was pursuing this passion for journalism in high school and college, I was at that time paying my car insurance bill, I guess. I didn't have a lot of bills, but paying the bills, as it were, with stage management gigs.
Oh.
I actually came from the theater.
You know what? You totally seem like a stage manager to me.
Thank you.
I bet you're
take
very
that as
organized.
compliment. I'm so organized.
You're probably type A. Is that the right expression? I don't know. Type A, type Z, whatever. But you're very organized. You probably work with spreadsheets a lot.
I love it.
Spreadsheets confuse the heck out of me.
That's why I make a good producer. Yeah.
You make a good producer. Exactly. So keep going.
So I never considered theater to be the profession that I wanted to pursue, mostly because if you're not going to be an actor, what are you going to do?
What are you going to do? Right.
So I was away from theater for a long time while I was discovering this passion for film and traveling and doing all these other things. But when I came back to Greensboro, it turned out there's not a film community here.
Right.
So while I had a couple of jobs where I was able to work in film, when I came back to this area, it just wasn't something that was an opportunity. But there was an opening at this theater company in marketing, and I had done a number of things related to sort of special events management. And I had this sort of stage management background in my younger years. So I applied and got the position.
Look at that.
Became a department manager within 6 months of being there. Yeah, it was kind of crazy. And now I am part of a really phenomenal team of really creative and collaborative individuals. And I get to tell their story to the public, which I think is a joy every day.
How are you telling their story to the public as a marketing director? Is it marketing director you do?
Marketing manager. I am the sort of megaphone for the company. All of our social media channels, all of our, digital advertising channels and our email and every postcard that goes out in the mail.
Wow.
All of that comes through me and is done by me.
So you mean tell the story of the theater, whatever message they're wanting to send. Is that what you mean?
Exactly.
That's such an interesting perspective on it. Yeah, marketing director. You're the theater. You're the face. It's like you're presenting the brand of the theater.
Absolutely. I am the steward of the brand.
Steward of the brand. And there's story behind that too. That's really fascinating.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Well, I know you used the word collaborative. So even as a marketing manager, it's a collaboration.
I think so. So the artists can do all of the work that they do on the stage, but it's my job to bring the audience to them. And the audience is really the last critical piece in any theater production. So I am a critical part of that team that makes that final experience for the audience happen, because I get them in the seats.
Look at that. Hey, that's the bottom line right there. Look, let me tell you. Number one, I think there are two things I got from what you said. For the fans out there, listen, Tiffany Albright, although she didn't have the specific job experience that was, I'm sure, in the job description, she found a way. She was a storyteller. You found the connections. You found a way to take your experience in theater and kind of make it match what they were looking for. And you got in there.
Yeah. I think my filmmaking skills helped.
It did help.
Yeah.
Okay.
If you want to be in marketing, it's really important to know how to operate a camera.
Oh, yes, I'm sure. So you tied the two together, and within 6 months, you were already promoted. I think that's a fascinating story. And so my prayer for you, Tiffany Albright, is that your career will, take off in the same way that, you have doors open to you, just like what happened at Triad.
Thank you.
I know you're persistent and you have perseverance, because you've been doing documentary film, or you've been doing film for over 10 years now. And so we know that it's your passion that keeps you going. I want your fans to hear a few things about maybe some personal details they don't know about you. So before we go, I want to throw some shooting star questions your way. And then I want to close off with you maybe giving a little piece of advice to maybe aspiring filmmakers. Okay, so keep that going in the back of your mind.
Yeah.
Now with these shooting star questions, I'm going to shoot them to you. I say in rapid speed. Not a single show yet have they actually come out at rapid speed, but we can imagine that they are. Shooting star question number 1. Your fans want to know, what is your favorite movie or play?
Spirited Away.
I think I'm familiar with that. What's your favorite food?
Any kind of Indian.
Favorite place in the whole wide world?
New York City.
Book you're reading right now, if you're reading a book?
Murder on the Orient Express.
Favorite childhood memory?
Slumber parties with my friends where we would watch really inappropriate horror movies at way too young ages.
Say horror at way too young. And your favorite Netflix or Amazon binge show?
Black Mirror.
Oh, do you have a favorite quote?
Not all those who wander are lost has been my favorite for a long time.
I think every artist out there, you don't even have to be an artist, but that quote.
You just feel it.
You just feel it. And it's very comforting, because I imagine many of us are somewhere, sometimes, just looking about going, what happened? Did I miss my window? Has the ship passed for me? What am I doing with my life? But with that quote,
not all those who wander are lost, from J.R.R. Tolkien.
They can certainly be encouraged to think that, hey, I'm still on the right path, even if I don't know exactly where I am. Tiffany Albright, thank you for that word of wisdom. God bless you for driving an hour here from Greensboro, North Carolina to be with us. Thank you for all that you shared about your journey thus far as a filmmaker. To follow up on Mara, the film Mara, is there a particular place they need to go?
You can just look for me on social.
Tiffany Albright?
Yes, Tiffany Albright on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. And I will be posting updates as soon as I've got them.
Are you the only Tiffany Albright? Like, if they do Tiffany Albright, you'll come up?
Oh, I don't know.
Should they do Tiffany Albright Mara? I don't know. Is there a
You could
keyword?
try that. There is a bit of branding that I still have to do on myself.
I know all about that.
My marketing manager in me is very disappointed.
Look at that.
But yes, if you search those two things, hopefully you will find me.
Well, and in due time, Mara is going to definitely be out and about, and so it'll be easy to find it online.
So yes, the longer it is between this interview live and when you're listening to it, the better the chances that something will be there.
Find it. Oh, we love you, Tiffany Albright. We love you. Thank you so much for twinkling your star here in this galaxy.
Oh, thank you.
Ticket to the Stars presents. That's TTTSP, Tuesdays at 3 on littleraleigh.radio.org.
A Stargaze Broadcast. A Stargaze Broadcast. A Stargaze Broadcast.
This is Jacob Downey, one of the co-founders of Little Raleigh Radio. We are elated to count Ticket to the Stars Presents and our lineup of programming, helping you hear where you are, through celebrating inspiring artists in your community and beyond with great conversation. If you're in the Raleigh area and you would like to join us and Ticket to the Stars Presents in amplifying great voices, email listen@littleraleigh.radio.org.